Welcome to WOW, the Women of the Week podcast series. This episode was made possible by a generous sponsorship from BioForum. For more information, visit bioforumgroup.com. In this episode, Taryn Grome, editor-in-chief of PharmaVoice magazine, meets with Donna LaVoie, president and CEO, LaVoie Health Science.
Donna, welcome to our WOW podcast program, and congratulations again on being named a PharmaVoice 100 this year.
Thank you so much, Taryn. It's exciting to be here with you today and also to be part of the PharmaVoice 100, a real honor. So thank you very much.
Well, it's very well deserved. It's been great getting to know you over the last couple of months, and I'm excited to explore some of the themes that we discussed for your profile for our WOW podcast. What's really interesting to me is that you started your company in 2001. That's the same time we started PharmaVoice. So we have that in common. Yep, I'd love to know, but what prompted you to take that entrepreneurial leap?
Yeah, it's not something that I set out to do. I think, Taryn, you know that I started my career actually in venture capital, which led me to my first job in biotech, which was Genzyme Corporation. So I was working at Advent International, one of the first venture firms that was spun out of TA Associates in Boston. And I was working there on the healthcare team. And my boss, who was on the board of Genzyme, encouraged me to start the agency, and I never looked back. And so, honestly, I mentioned to you, and I think we're going to talk about this, is, I worked for Henry Tremere at Genzyme, and Henry said to me that I would have my own agency one day. And here I am, 19 years later.
I know, right? Next year is going to be the big 20. So congratulations on that and your continued success. Let's talk about that influence that Henry had on you. He's obviously recognized as one of the most influential people in the biotech industry. What did that relationship mean to you, and how did it impact your framework for what the biotech industry was or is?
Yeah, I mean, it had tremendous impact on me as an individual and my career for sure. And little did I know that when my former boss, John Littlechild at Advent, when he made the introduction for me, I had no idea. And that's the truth. I mean, I started my first day at Genzyme when we were in the Chinatown district on Nealon Street in Boston. So I had no idea, Taryn, and that's the truth. Henry was an unusual person and a one-of-a-kind entrepreneur. Having worked with both he and the original management team of Genzyme, which, many people don't talk about that original team, but that team was phenomenal. And I had a very strong and close relationship with all of those people, and also many luminaries in the field. And that had a dramatic impact, as I mentioned. It was really about, access to people that mattered. It was like going to Harvard or MIT.
That's great. Yeah, talk about really being in the ground floor of the burgeoning biotech sector at the time. Very exciting. And with that excitement, what continues to, get you jazzed up working with companies in this sector?
Yeah, that's really easy for me. I'm excited about the breadth and depth of what we do. The work is infectious and incredibly demanding all at the same time. It's the people that make it work in their quest for making the world better, with a focus on making better lives for all of us. the inside view of these companies is pretty darn interesting. It's nothing like working in a large company for sure. So it's really, you know, the insider's view. It's the people that make it happen, in their, you know, their journeys, if you will. You know, we support their journeys, right? So, you know, that's part of what we do as a communications agency.
Sure. And how did that early VC experience, how does that help you? Because you obviously have to help craft these stories for these small biotech companies. And you sort of have the inside scoop of what's attractive to folks who are looking to put their funds someplace.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the charters of these funds, you know, are all different. And, you know, there's different things are in vogue at different times, but certainly being part of that in my formative years, definitely helped, because I got to be a part of a team where we looked at deal flow, right? So, you know, we would get a lot of inbound inquiries, a lot of business plans, and would have to log them in, you know, around category. And then, you know, the team would have to evaluate, you know, the inbound requests and respond or move forward. So understanding sort of the behind the scenes of how it really works, you know, is very interesting. So that's certainly, you know, transcended on, you know, my understanding of, you know, how investors think about these things, how it really happens, the relationships that matter. You know, it's certainly the story, but it's also the relationship. So.
Excellent. You know, when you started your business almost 20 years ago, as a woman, it wasn't nearly as common as it is today. Did you find yourself facing any resistance or any?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I think the thing that's probably the most interesting thing about it is, you know, certainly communications, there's plenty of women in communications, right? So, but it's what we do for a living, meaning the specialization, right? I think that's where it really is unusual, or what was unusual, right? Because there weren't many of us around. And I remember this, I'll tell you a story, I won't say who it was, but you know, when I was at Genzyme leading communications, we worked with a couple of, you know, fairly high profile at the time, male PR professionals. And this person said to me, he said, you know, you ought to think about working in fashion or in general health care or something like that, you know. And I thought to myself, no way. No way am I going to do that. And just for that comment, I'm going to keep going.
Wow. Right. And it's not that long ago, 20 years, but yet, you know, that kind of bias was still pretty prevalent back then. So,
Absolutely. You know, I
um,
mean, if you happen to, you know, actually, you know, like to wear something fashionable, that automatically meant that you needed to work in fashion, you know.
right. You couldn't look good
It's
and still
very
be smart.
interesting. Yeah.
Oh, wow. You know, it's so interesting, but I'm glad you did keep going. So good for you. So, you know, over these last 20 years, you've seen a lot of trends come and go, and you've seen the cycles go up and down. What are some of the top trends you're tracking right now in PR? And then we'll talk about what you're tracking right now for your clients.
Yeah. So, you know, what we're seeing right now on Taryn, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is, you know, this real kind of shift, right? From, you know, many of these companies are story companies. They're not revenue stories. And over the 20 years, we've had shifts from product stories to platform stories, back to product stories again. You know, now we're in the platform, you know, promise of the future kind of time. And regardless of what time we're in, it is about how you're putting your story together and how you're getting it, how you're tracking, how you're getting awareness built around your story, right? It's not enough to have all the right things, the people, the technology, and the right investors. You're also, there's so many, for example, there's so much happening in cell and gene. And, we're getting a lot of calls, about, well, we need to make sure that we're differentiated because, if you look at one website and you go to the other, they sound the same. They're just different company names. And so we're getting to a point where there's so many companies now that differentiation is pretty critical. And that means, really powerful articulation of how you tell that story and make it different, whatever that is. What's the secret sauce?
Right. And when we talk about these gene and cell therapy companies, really their commercialization strategies are so much different than
Correct. Yeah.
Uh, other types of therapeutics. So you really do need to be quite specialized and really thinking about access and market access, I would think.
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of different pieces for sure. There's a lot of different pieces. And, so that's what we're seeing is, the need for, we have a product that we actually trademarked called LHS Immersion. And it's a branded methodology around positioning and messaging, and then a blueprint plan. And we're finding that, that's pretty critical to the startup phase of any engagement.
Excellent. In 2019, you took an interesting turn. You entered into a strategic alliance with Omnicom Public Relations Group. What led you to make this move?
As you can imagine, there's been a lot of interest in LaVoie over the years by different folks. And, none of them were really the right situations. I mean, as you know, this is a specialized business, and aligning with another partner really requires them to understand that, we're not big pharma, right? Big pharma moves in different ways. And, there's a lot of differences for sure. Omnicom had reached out to me with interest in coming together around innovation, their desire to work with companies earlier in the development cycle. As you probably can imagine, they typically get involved more at phase 3 and beyond. And we're typically before that, right? We may work with companies through phase 3 and commercialization, but we're at the table a lot earlier. And
Sure.
So that was their interest. And our interest was, how do we work with companies as they continue to mature? So that's how we aligned on that premise.
Obviously you are a very inspired leader. How would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, I guess you'd have to talk to others, but I'm incredibly driven. I'm very curious, for sure. Tenacity is, I guess, one of my strengths. I'm committed to ensuring that other people succeed, especially the longer I'm in this business, for sure. But I'd say those are my qualities. I'm always learning. I'm always very interested. I'm always thinking about, a new approach to the way we're doing something, for example, or how we could do something better.
And what are those qualities you look for in the folks that you bring on board to lead some of your different teams? What are those leadership qualities? The same as yours, or do you look for complementary skills?
No, I look for different. I mean, certainly you have to align around sort of core values, right?
Sure.
But, I think, training and development, which means, team collaboration, that's really important, in order to take the company forward from here. We've had a lot of success, but we need to keep going, is the need for training and development. One of the impediments to this business that we're in is as in the earlier stages of these companies, it's very complex stuff. And, you just don't come in off the street and necessarily become successful at this. So the training is pretty important, and the collaboration and the leadership there.
You've reached the pinnacle of success with your company and with your vision for what public relations can do. Is there anything you know now that you wish you had known as you were moving up the ranks?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on the way you look at it. I mean, if you had asked me then, when John Littlechild said, go start your agency and come back to me. If I had really known what it was going to take, it would have been daunting to me, for sure. I mean, yeah, this is not easy. It's not easy. I mean, anything that's worthwhile is not easy. I didn't come from the agency business, right? I came from industry. So, there's that. But I think it's incredible how complex and the impact that we can have. And especially as the industry matures, how important the function is. I think in the earlier days is, throw out a few press releases. It's become far more strategic and, far more complex, right? These are, complex data sets and readouts and, public-private. We were involved in data readout for Alzheimer's last week. It's complex stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just the press release anymore. It really does involve crafting the story, as you said earlier, about an organization and understanding what it is they do on a real intimate basis. Otherwise, the story would fall short, I would imagine, and fall flat.
Yeah, I mean, in particular around data, for example, whether it be, positive or negative or neutral data. And it's, communication really having a seat at the table to say, look, guys, this is what it is. And if we say this, we won't be credible. So there's, being part of those conversations.
And finally, Donna, tell me about an accomplishment or a wow moment that shaped your career.
This is kind of an early story, but when I started my agency in the basement of my house, with just my computer and, only one other person working with me, I had come from a corporate environment, right? So, while they weren't huge companies, I still had infrastructure. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting in the basement of my house by myself with my computer, and I'm like, I guess this is it. And then when your computer doesn't work, or, and this is 19 years ago, something doesn't go well, then, there's nobody to help you. So you've got to figure these things out, and it's having the tenacity to take it forward. So, I guess those moments, luckily now I'm in a much different position, but, it's those kind of moments you just say, am I going to keep doing this, and then you get through it. So it's, getting through every passage, if you will, of the journey. It's always a new challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's where you have to learn to be the chef, the bottle washer,
Yeah,
the all
exactly.
to do all
It's
those
like,
functions,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yes, and I would say tenacity and resilience are some of those signs of being a successful entrepreneur because you do have to ride out some of those tough moments to get to the crest. And so,
yeah.
congratulations to you on 19 years of success.
Thank you.
Um, and I wish you many, many, many more years of success. And congratulations again on being named a Farmer Voice 100. And thank you for joining us for our WOW podcast program. It was delightful speaking with you.
Thank you, Taryn. Appreciate all the work you're doing and your team as well. It's amazing.
Thank you for listening to this episode of WOW, the Woman of the Week podcast. And thanks to BioForum for making this episode possible. For more information, visit bioforumgroup.com. And don't forget to check out our other episodes of WOW at pharmavoice.com/wow. This 2020 program is copyrighted by PharmaLinks LLC.